You see her now, confident, radiant, bold, walking like she knows something others don't. But what you missed was the midnight hour. You missed the silence of her tears. You didn't see the battles she fought with no applause, no audience, and no hand to hold but the hand of the Almighty. She prayed in private, and God began preparing her in public. Ladies and gentlemen, when God wants to raise a woman, he doesn't start with the crowd, he starts with the closet. Because the measure of a woman's public authority is determined by the depth of her private intimacy. It is not what she posts that gives her power. It is what she surrenders when no one's watching. God doesn't prepare women in popularity, he prepares them in privacy. You cannot carry public glory if you have not embraced private brokenness. And here is the divine principle. God will never expose what has not first been consecrated. That's why some of you feel invisible right now. It's not punishment, it's protection. He's shielding you from premature exposure so he can build something in you that cannot be shaken. When a woman detaches emotionally from what the world says she needs, she becomes spiritually available for what heaven wants to give. Some of you had to walk away, not because you were weak, but because your spirit outgrew the environment. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped chasing your silence. You stopped chasing approval. That wasn't pride, that was preparation. You see, spiritual detachment is a divine strategy. It is heaven's way of saying you no longer need to carry what was never yours to begin with. The woman who can walk away without bitterness is a woman who has found her source in God alone. And when your source is divine, your supply never runs out. God often removes what you thought you needed so he can reveal what you were truly called to. You lost the relationship, but gained clarity. You lost the opportunity, but found your voice. That wasn't rejection, that was redirection. It's in the quiet seasons that purpose is refined. Let me tell you something powerful. Before God trusts you to speak to the nations, he will teach you to weep in his presence. Before he gives you influence, he will require intimacy. Before you lead in public, you must surrender in private. The preparation of God always feels like separation from man. But the more heaven detaches you from what's temporal, the more it clothes you in what's eternal. You cannot soar if you're still tethered. Some of you are trying to fly with anchors tied to your soul, people, patterns, opinions. But when you finally detach from the noise, you begin to hear the voice of purpose. And that voice doesn't shout, it whispers in the secret place. She prayed in private. And that prayer wasn't poetic, it was prophetic. It birthed discipline. It birthed discernment. It birthed detachment. Not the kind of detachment that makes you indifferent, but the kind that makes you unshakable. You want to be used by God? Then expect to be hidden first. Expect to be misunderstood. Expect to be alone. Because God does not anoint performance. He anoints authenticity. He doesn't look for the loudest voice. He looks for the deepest root. And the root is always developed in hidden soil. The woman who prayed in private became the woman people now admire in public. But the applause never moved her because her affirmation didn't come from people, it came from purpose. And when your soul is anchored in divine assignment, you no longer beg to be seen, you live to be sent. Private prayer is not just a spiritual activity, it is the sacred ground where a woman discovers who she truly is. In the hidden moments, When no one is watching and no one is listening, the voice of God becomes clear. In those private encounters, identity is not given by the world. It is revealed by the Spirit. You are not what people say you are. You are who heaven says you are. And it is only in the quiet place of prayer that this revelation can be received without distortion. The world often tries to define women by external standards, appearance, status, approval, or productivity. But none of those things carry weight in the throne room of God. In His presence, all titles fall away and only truth remains. It is in prayer that confusion is stripped away and clarity is formed. In the private place, the noise of the world is silenced so the whisper of destiny can be heard. That's where assignments are birthed, where wounds are healed, and where vision is restored. The private place is where a woman learns to stand tall, not because of applause, but because of alignment. She doesn't leave her prayer closet with emotional dependency. She walks out with spiritual authority. She understands her value because she's heard it from the mouth of the one who made her. In prayer, she is not begging God for attention. She is communing with the Creator who has already chosen her. And that communion transforms her. It gives her the strength to detach from what is superficial and the grace to pursue what is significant. Private prayer becomes the place of divine negotiation, where she lays down fear and picks up faith, where she releases control and receives calling, where she sheds shame and embraces purpose. When God places greatness inside a woman, He does not rush to reveal it to the world. He hides it, nurtures it, and matures it in secret. Just like a seed is planted deep beneath the surface where no one can see, the greatness within her is buried in seasons of obscurity, silence, and seeming insignificance. But that hiddenness is intentional. It is heaven's strategy for protection and development. The moment the soil of solitude is where her character is tested, her motives are purified, and her roots are established. Before she ever blossoms in public, she must survive the darkness in private. And just because people can't see the growth doesn't mean growth isn't happening. God hides greatness because premature exposure can destroy what is still forming. Public stages are dangerous places for unprepared hearts. So God shields her from visibility, not to punish her, but to preserve her. He is not ignoring her prayers. He is building her capacity. He is not withholding opportunity. He is strengthening her identity. What looks like delay is actually divine design. Every hidden season is a setup for sustainable elevation. Because God is not interested in quick applause. He is invested in eternal impact. She may feel unseen, but she is being shaped. She may feel forgotten, but she is being formed. The world celebrates visibility, but God values preparation. It is in the hidden seasons that she learns to rely on God, not people, to pursue purpose, not validation, to serve without recognition and to love without condition. By the time God brings her into public view, she's not hungry for approval. She's rooted in assignment. And when that moment comes, her fruit will be undeniable because it came from a process that no one else witnessed but God. Spiritual detachment is not about becoming numb or indifferent. It is about rising above the emotional traps that seek to weaken your purpose. A woman who has prayed in private learns to surrender the need for constant validation, affection, or understanding from others. She is no longer driven by emotional chaos, but led by divine clarity. Detachment in this context is not a withdrawal from love or compassion. It is a sacred distance from anything that threatens her spiritual alignment. She is not cold, she is focused. She is not hard-hearted, she is heaven-minded. Her decisions are no longer dictated by temporary feelings, but by eternal truths. This kind of woman doesn't cling to people out of fear, nor does she compromise her worth for the sake of belonging. Her heart has been anchored in something deeper. Her strength flows from knowing that what God has for her cannot be stolen, manipulated, or rushed. She lets go with peace because she understands the principle: what is not sent by God will not sustain her soul. She releases what's not assigned because she trusts what heaven is preparing. Confidence is no longer based on who stays or who leaves. It's based on who called her. And because of that revelation, she walks differently. She doesn't beg, she doesn't chase, she doesn't fight for places where her spirit no longer fits. She carries herself with quiet dignity because her confidence is rooted in divine security. Emotional detachment becomes a sign that she's graduated from survival to purpose, from reaction to revelation. She no longer lives to be accepted, she lives to be effective. That shift doesn't make her less loving. It makes her more powerful. Because only a woman who is free from emotional bondage can fully submit to spiritual calling. Before God ever gives a woman a platform to speak, influence, or lead, he first examines her private altar. That altar is the place of surrender, obedience, and consistency when no one is looking. It is in the quiet corners of her life, her prayer room, her daily choices, her secret thoughts, where the real preparation takes place. Public anointing is the result of private submission. The world may see the gift, the stage, the favor, but heaven measures the heart behind it all. God does not promote based on talent. He promotes based on trust. And he only trusts what has been tested. A woman who prays in private builds a history with God. She walks through seasons of silence where her only audience is the Spirit. In those moments, she learns to obey without applause, to worship without recognition, to persevere without affirmation. That kind of woman becomes unshakable in public because she has been unbreakable in private. Her altar has been built not with ambition, but with tears, with repentance, with discipline. Every act of hidden obedience becomes a brick in the foundation of her future impact. When she finally stands in public, what people hear in her voice is not just knowledge, it is weight. It is authority that was earned in places no one else entered. Her message carries substance because it was first preached to herself. God will not anoint a stage that replaces the secret place. If she loses her altar, she loses her authority. But if she guards her private life, God will honor her with a public platform. Not because she chased it, but because she was faithful when no one saw her. And the fragrance of her hidden worship becomes the aroma that draws heaven's favor in the open. When a woman chooses to walk away from the noise, she is not being distant, she is being discerning. The world often misunderstands silence, mistaking it for weakness or withdrawal. But in reality, silence is the language of spiritual focus. A woman who walks away from gossip, distractions, constant validation, and emotional chaos is a woman who understands the weight of her destiny. She does not have time to entertain what does not align with her calling. A silence is not emptiness, it is strategy. She knows that every moment spent in noise is a moment stolen from her purpose. Purpose requires clarity, and clarity is impossible in the midst of constant chatter. The woman who is serious about her assignment must learn to protect her environment. She filters her conversations, she guards her time, and she no longer apologizes for saying no. She understands that peace is not a luxury, it is a weapon. It protects her discernment, strengthens her decisions, and keeps her anchored in what matters most. The discipline of emotional detachment is not a defense mechanism. It is wisdom. It is the ability to remain connected to people, but not controlled by them. She can love deeply and still walk away from dysfunction. She does not need to explain her absence or justify her silence because she knows that destiny often requires disappearing for a season. It is in the absence from crowds that God sharpens her vision, aligns her motives, and restores her strength. She stops seeking rooms where she has to shrink to fit in. She stops speaking just to be heard. Her presence becomes intentional. Her absence becomes powerful. She is not hiding, she is healing. She is not passive, she is preparing. And every step away from noise is a step deeper into alignment with her divine assignment. Purpose does not come wrapped in comfort. It arrives dressed in isolation. When God calls a woman to something greater, he often separates her before he elevates her. This is not rejection, it is refinement. Many confuse isolation with abandonment, but divine separation is a holy setup. It is in the lonely places where distractions are stripped, where dependency is broken, and where the true self is revealed. In these moments, she learns that she is not defined by who surrounds her, but by who sustains her. God removes the voices that drown out his own, not to punish her, but to prepare her for what's coming. Separation is necessary because distinction requires difference. God cannot anoint her for something unique while she is still entangled in the familiar. He cannot pour fresh oil into a vessel still occupied by the opinions and expectations of others. So he calls her out, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. He separates her from old mindsets, from toxic attachments, from places where her spirit no longer thrives. And in doing so, he creates space for something sacred to form within her. This process is painful because it's lonely. People may leave. Opportunities may dry up. Silence may become louder than ever before. But in that silence, God speaks. In that emptiness, he fills. In that stillness, he builds. What the world calls a setback, heaven calls a setup. Because when God is preparing someone for impact, he doesn't decorate her life with comfort. He fills it with consecration. By the time he brings her into visibility, she's not walking into destiny needy, she's walking in whole. She no longer needs to be surrounded to feel strong. She learned in the dark what others will only see in the light. That purpose doesn't begin with applause, it begins with isolation. When a woman is spiritually anchored, no external storm has the power to uproot her. Her strength does not come from circumstances, relationships, or accolades. It comes from her foundation in God. She is not easily swayed because her identity is not built on shifting opinions, but on eternal truth. When she prays in private, she establishes a connection with the unmovable, the unshakable, and the unchangeable. That connection becomes her core. It is what steadies her when life throws its hardest punches. She doesn't need to scream to be heard or fight to prove her worth. She knows who she is. And that knowledge produces peace. A woman anchored in the Spirit does not chase validation. She doesn't need to perform to be accepted or compromise to be loved. Her heart is already full. And when the heart is full of God, there is no room for desperation. She can walk away from chaos without explanation, detach from toxic patterns without guilt, and hold her boundaries with grace. Her strength is quiet, but it is undeniable. Her posture is humble, but it is firm. She knows that everything around her can change, but the one within her never does. Because she has built her life on the presence of God, she can face rejection without bitterness and wait without anxiety. She no longer reacts to every attack or responds to every insult. Her spirit is rooted too deeply to be moved by shallow things. While others draw power from platforms, popularity, or possessions, she draws hers from the secret place. That's why people don't understand how she still stands, because they didn't see the hours she spent on her knees. Her public stability is the result of private surrender. And what God builds in the spirit cannot be broken in the flesh. The woman who prays in private becomes a force in public. Not because she is loud, but because she is rooted. Her strength isn't the result of what she carries on her back, but who she carries in her heart. She doesn't rise by manipulating doors open. She rises because God himself opens them at the appointed time. And when she walks through them, she does so with quiet authority, knowing she has already been approved in the courts of heaven. You may be hidden now. You may be in a season where no one claps, no one calls, and no one sees. But heaven sees, and heaven records. And when God prepares a woman in private, no man, no system, and no storm can stop her from rising in public. So stay anchored, stay consecrated, stay detached from what drains you and connected to what builds you. Because the woman who knows her God cannot be manipulated by man. She is not waiting to be discovered, she's waiting to be released. Your private obedience is building a platform public applause can never sustain. God is not finished with you. He's forming something eternal. And when the time comes, you won't need to fight for your place. You'll simply step into what's already been prepared for you because you were prepared for it.